Red 2 standing by, all 4 lit, and in the green, welcome back to Goldeneye. Last time, after a lot of stress, I got invincibility. I earned that cheat code legit, which is fairly hard work. You need everything to go right, but we did in the end. Today's mission is the Runway, and I'm going to be talking about how the books present Bond's allies at MI6 and in other places across his adventures. Assuming it doesn't send me back there. So, we're going to be selecting the Runway mission. Now, we won't have a special let's go and get the cheat mission, unless of course I absolutely screw this up. It's possible, but... So, Runway will vary. I didn't really need to show Facility on 00 Agent because it's pretty much the same, but I just wanted to prove, hey, I've done it, and hey, I've done it with invincibility. So, we will start talking about Bond's allies who help us with this mission as we move onto the Runway. Our primary objectives on Agent: find the plane ignition key and escape in the plane. The service runway is the obvious escape route from the Arkhangelsk chemical weapons facility. M's briefing? 006 knew this was going to be a risky mission. His sacrifice should give you enough time to find an aircraft. Keep a cool head and you'll get out alive. Just be certain to knock out the heavy gun emplacements and missile battery, or they'll swat you out of the air like a silly fly. No time for gadgets here, 007. Just improvise with what you can find close to hand. Grace under pressure, as always, James. The following information has been sourced from Ian Fleming's books and the other books written by Kingsley Amis, John Pearson and Raymond Benson. I have also sourced information from Andrew Lycett's biography of Ian Fleming, Sean Egan's James Bond: The Secret History, and Keith Jeffrey's MI6: The History of the Secret Intelligence Service from 1909 to 1949. Now we can proceed with our lesson. We all know James Bond is the hero out there saving the world, but what about the support team? Bond's allies at MI6 have had greater roles in the movies, with M being the most consistent figure across both mediums. It is well worth getting to know these characters and how they started, since no matter how big or small, the roles they play in the world of 007 have become quite significant. Throughout the career of the literary 007, one man sat at the helm of MI6, Admiral Sir Miles Messervy, codename M. M is a Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, which he was apparently awarded a few years prior to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. He seems to barely regard the honour, though he has apparently held a knighthood since Moonraker or sometime before that. Messervy's role was most likely inspired by the heads of England's intelligence department during World War II, that is, the actual Secret Intelligence Service or MI6, Admiral Hugh Sinclair and Colonel Stuart Menzies, with elements of Fleming's own superior Admiral John Godfrey. M's age is never actually specified, but he would most likely be in his 70s by the time of Casino Royale. At the very least, he seems to have grown up in the later part of the 19th century, as Goldfinger states Bond's womanizing was anathema to his Victorian soul. Early books note M's eyes as being cold and shrewd, grey in colour. Moonraker and then several other books afterward describe M as having a sailor's face, but thanks to his special style of suit, he looks like any member of any gentleman's club. Interestingly, the books seem to give more description of M's various suits than of the man himself. Only in The Man with the Golden Gun do we actually receive any further descriptors of M. His hair is iron grey with a bald patch. As far as Fleming's books go, that's really all we have in terms of appearance. It would actually take the films to cement a full physical appearance of M in the form of Bernard Lee. M is described as having a rather blunt and grouchy manner. The term irascible is frequently used when his temperament is discussed. He apparently has certain idiosyncrasies, such as not employing men with beards, insisting on fully bilingual operatives, and distrusting people who are too dressy or who call him Sir off-duty. On Her Majesty's Secret Service reveals he greatly dislikes the neglect of Britain's trains and doesn't like beatniks, but a constant major issue is people wasting the service's time and money. However, M does place a great deal of trust in those who prove their worth, and Bond is one such example. Despite their differing approaches, M clearly shows respect for him. At the same time, he expects Bond to be on top of his game and ready to face the toughest challenges, just as any 00 agent should be. In Thunderball, he sends Bond to the Shrublands Health Clinic after 007's most recent medical shows potential issues from his drinking and smoking habits. Bond is still remarkably physically fit despite both those and his many injuries, and at the start of You Only Live Twice, M is prepared to fire Bond after the latter's breakdown following the death of his wife, but is persuaded to give him another chance. Interestingly, M himself smokes, but always does so with a pipe. His social life is rarely seen, and not a great deal of his military career is mentioned. Of the latter, the titular short story in For Your Eyes Only reveals he had to turn down a likely appointment to the role of 5th Sea Lord to command MI6. This was a real-life post, originally founded in 1917 and assisting with overseeing naval operations. After World War I, the position lapsed until 1938, where it was reinstated and maintained until 1965, when it was fully abolished. It originally dealt with naval aviation. M clearly takes great pride in his military service and the days of the Empire. His office has displayed a number of paintings featuring great British naval victories, and similar decorations exist at his house. On the social side, Moonraker reveals M has a membership of the esteemed Gentlemen's Club Blades, which is analogous in location to the real-life Gentlemen's Club Prats. He has a good relationship with the club chairman Basildon, who asks M's assistance in handling suspicions of cheating surrounding Sir Hugo Drax in the novel Moonraker. The club also keeps a supply of a rather questionable Algerian wine nicknamed Infuriator on hand for him. M is the only one who actually likes it. On Her Majesty's Secret Service informs us M resides in a Regency-era manor house on the edge of Windsor Forest, with a bell from a former HMS Repulse, tied to M's last naval appointment, as its doorbell of sorts. M's last chief petty officer, a man named Hammond, serves as a valet of sorts alongside his wife. The book also reveals M paints in watercolour and is fairly knowledgeable about flowers. Additionally, For Your Eyes Only also reveals that the couple murdered by Major Gonzalez, the Havelocks, were actually friends of M's. His excess frustration in that story seems to be connected in part with their deaths and the fact he cannot officially sanction any operations. Bond picks up that M would like something done, makes the suggestion in M's place, and works off the books for him as a mark of his respect for the man. Q, as we know him, does not actually appear in the books, but a character who bears his actual name, Major Boothroyd, features in Dr. No as the MI6 armourer. Fleming drew on the expertise of an actual small arms expert, Geoffrey Boothroyd, who wrote to him regarding Bond's choice of weapons around the time Dr. No was being written. The sentiments of Major Boothroyd in the novel echo the expert's own. Bond's original sidearm, a .25 caliber Beretta, is described as a lady's gun, his words, not mine, and Bond is outfitted by Boothroyd with what would become his signature weapon for the rest of Fleming's novels and 17.5 movies, the Walther PPK, taking 7.65mm ammunition. The way its grip was structured and the fact its ammunition was easier to get was part of the reason Boothroyd suggested it over other guns that came a bit ahead of it in testing. The Major also supplies Bond with a 5-shot Smith & Wesson Centennial Airweight .38 caliber revolver. This weapon does not appear past Dr. No, perhaps because Fleming was ashamed of his error in claiming the gun was for long-range use instead of its actual shorter-range capacity. However, if we really want to get to know Major Boothroyd, we have to divert to the movies and the almost ever-present Desmond Llewellyn and his memorable performance as Q. Moneypenny does appear in the books, with a role not entirely removed from the ones a movie flirting with Bond. She maintains her role as M's secretary, but is also shown to be good friends with the 00 Section's secretary Lelia Ponsonby, who has never appeared in the movies. Casino Royale provides her first brief experience, and we learn she shares an office with Bill Tanner, the Chief of Staff, who served in the sappers during World War II. Moneypenny is described as largely desirable, but with cool and quizzical eyes which apparently detract from this trait. Interestingly, Diamonds Are Forever goes on to describe them as warm, perhaps another case of Fleming fumbling minor continuity details. She's also noted to have brown eyes in that book. Most of the time we get general inferences about Moneypenny being quite beautiful and having a romantic interest in Bond, but not a great deal is mentioned. She does help provide some information, such as in Thunderball, where she fills Bond in on why M is so focused on health treatments all of a sudden. It is in the same book we learn she started her career in the service in the Cypher department. She is clearly an experienced member of the team, though little of her life and duty is shown. There is actually a book called The Moneypenny Diaries which focuses on her, but I admittedly haven't read that yet. I haven't been able to find it. Bill Tanner does not receive much of a description in Casino Royale, though Moonraker reveals he is about Bond's age, and in the next book he is mentioned as lean and relaxed. He's apparently well acquainted with M's thought processes, part of his job, and sheds additional light on the details of Bond's missions. The next detail we get of Tanner is in Dr. No, where we find out he's Bond's best friend in the service. He's prematurely grey at the temples, and is physically tough with a good sense of humour, which has helped him handle everything he's come up against. His rank in the sappers is confirmed as Colonel. Not much else is added during his next appearance in You Only Live Twice, though unlike Moneypenny he is more willing to be supportive of Bond despite his significant troubles. This may be at M's orders, but it certainly seems as though their friendship is very strong. Both Tanner and Moneypenny are very worried about Bond when he returns from what seems to be the dead at the start of The Man with the Golden Gun, but are prepared to trust M's judgment that Bond's brainwashing can be reversed and that he's the man to take on Scaramanga. Outside MI6, Bond's most reliable ally is Felix Leiter, a CIA agent introduced in Casino Royale. Leiter is described as having blonde, specifically straw-coloured hair, blue eyes and a fairly lean build. His suit hangs off him like the clothes of a young Frank Sinatra. Bond's observations conclude Leiter would be a tough and cruel fighter, but his personality is generally friendly and the two get along very well. It is Leiter who bails Bond out after he loses to Le Chiffre with an emergency financial support package referring to the post-World War II Marshall Plan. Felix returns in Live and Let Die, working in tandem with Bond through the American section of the investigation into Mr. Big's criminal and smuggling operations. That's not a generic name. The villain of said book is ostentatiously named Bonaparte Ignace Gallia and has been nicknamed Mr. Big or the Big Man for some time. Felix is able to help bail Bond out of potential trouble with the FBI, even though there is some begrudging acknowledgement from the feds that the agents of Mr. Biggs Bond has killed were worth taking down. Felix's mauling by sharks actually occurs in this novel, and while he does ultimately survive, he loses a leg and his right hand. He's no longer officially employed by the CIA, but he takes work with the Pinkertons detective agency, somehow carrying enough sway to lend official support where needed. He does so in Diamonds Are Forever, which is where the audience learns of his survival, and is able to help Bond destroy the Spangled Mob's diamond smuggling operations in America. Felix's work is not officially sanctioned with his government, but the two nonetheless form a very capable team, with the information about the mob's operations and contacts Felix can provide ultimately proving vital. He next appears at the climax of Goldfinger to assist in thwarting the villain's schemes. He's received Bond's warning about Goldfinger's plan and the details thereof, which were hidden on Goldfinger's plane for cleaners to find as something of a desperate gamble by Bond. Subsequently, Felix is able to assist in a major counter-operation to fool Goldfinger and avoid the mass killing of people in the vicinity of Fort Knox. Despite the fact the operation has full presidential approval and is considered extremely important, sadly the Marines are unable to catch Goldfinger, but the villain gets his just desserts at the hands of Bond. Felix is once more a vital ally during Bond's time in the Bahamas during Thunderball, having been called back into service due to the severity of Spectre's threats. He assists Bond in his initial visit to and examination of the Disco Volante, Largo's yacht, and assists him in finding the downed bomber. He also provides someone to bounce ideas off and share information about respective approaches. He participates in the final battle with Spectre's forces, though his air hose is damaged and he has to sit out of the fight for a little while. Felix's final appearance in the Fleming books is in Jamaica during the events of The Man with the Golden Gun, where he helps Bond set a trap to eliminate the members of the Group, a communist-backed criminal enterprise and sabotage organisation led by Francisco Scaramanga. Felix shares very similar interests to Bond. They both like the occasional round of fine dining and enjoy fast cars. The two will trade playful barbs about the superiority of England or America in any matter, perhaps best displayed when Felix is driving Bond through America in his Studebaker, that is, a Studebaker with a Cadillac engine. Their relationship clearly means a lot to Bond. While we never really get Felix's direct thoughts on the matter, Bond definitely values his friendship and Felix clearly shows similar values. It is interesting to see that Felix is in a sense the junior partner in this team, perhaps due to some desire on Fleming's part to return to the days when England was the great world power and America just a youthful upstart. Nonetheless, he has always held a degree of popularity despite the movies constantly changing his actor. Licence to Kill was the only time prior to Jeffrey Wright in the Craig era that an actor returned as Felix, with David Hedison returning after first playing Felix in Live and Let Die. Felix would continue to make appearances on occasion through later books, with the man himself and his daughter appearing in John Gardner's For Special Services. Interestingly, Gardner's novelisation of Licence to Kill runs into quite a few issues due to the fact Gardner tended to link his movie tie-ins to the Fleming continuity. Felix gets fed to sharks again, but the villains didn't know he had prosthetics from a prior mauling, and he's apparently had more than one marriage, with the ill-fated Della his most recent bride. For a guy whose first name is drawn from the Latin word for luck, Felix hasn't quite lived up to that in the books. Bond has had several other allies through his adventures, with only a few making repeat appearances. The first of these is René Mathis, an agent of France's Deuxième Bureau, apologies for pronunciation, who appears in Casino Royale and later at the end of From Russia with Love. Mathis is a very capable agent with a notable sense of humour, though little about his appearance is mentioned. His jovial manner and friendly teasing of Bond on occasion seems to suggest there is a good connection. It almost serves as a precursor to how Bond and Felix connect. Towards the end of Live and Let Die, Bond is introduced to the head of the Caribbean MI6 station, Lieutenant Commander Strangways. Strangways is actually given more of a description than many other characters. He's lean and tanned, with a patch over one eye and aquiline good looks, but despite his sense of humour, he bears aspects of being rather highly strung. Bond also gets help from a Cayman Islander named Quarrel, who is very friendly and likeable despite his name. Quarrel helps Bond get into top physical form in order to undertake the dangerous swim to Mr. Big's island lair, and is very knowledgeable about the area. He generally refers to Bond as Captain, as a mark of respect, and it's very clear Bond respects him immensely in turn. Quarrel is admittedly presented in something of a stereotypical way, but at the very least he is actually shown quite a bit of respect and treated fairly, which was decent for the time, honestly. Both Quarrel and Strangways would return in Dr. No, though neither would have happy endings. Strangways' investigations into Crab Key would see him and his secretary killed and MI6's Jamaican station burned, while Quarrel would perish during Bond's own investigations, incinerated by a flamethrower mounted on the Dragon tank used by Dr. No's men. In Diamonds Are Forever, we meet taxi driver Ernie Curio. He's a friend of Felix Leiter's and is able to assist Bond in Las Vegas. He has a thorough knowledge of how the place works and the way the mob groups in town behave. In the 1950s, Vegas was still very much mob-run. Curio is badly injured when Bond is captured by Serafimo Spang's men, but he thankfully does appear to survive. We know that he's a very tough, very intelligent and very dependable character, and he would most likely bear traits of Ian's friend Ernest Cuneo, on whom he is based. During From Russia with Love, Bond's main ally is the head of MI6's Station T, the now unfortunately named Darko Kerim. Kerim's brother bore a name referring to White. The Kerim of the novels is still a jovial fellow who enjoys fine living, even stating he assumes his epitaph will read, "This man died from living too much." He proves a very useful and knowledgeable ally up until his death, killed by an MGB agent named Benz while on the Orient Express, but he does take Benz down as well. The major takeaway from the literary Kerim are the extremely problematic views he holds. They may even have raised eyebrows at the time due to the savagery involved and the extreme misogyny. Rather not dwell on them, but to put it simply, the literary Kerim is stated to have effectively raped a woman into subservience and believes the Turks secretly want to go back to the days of raping and pillaging under previous rulers. Pretty horrid stuff, but it's much better seeing him actually in the movies, where Pedro Armendáriz was incredibly charming. Through Dr. No onwards, Bond has very familiar allies, with notable ones next appearing in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. He is given assistance through the College of Arms, specifically a gentleman using the title Sable Basilisk, who has also been undertaking investigation into genealogy connected to Blofeld. Basilisk is a few years younger than Bond, with studious features and small elements which save him from looking excessively serious. He actually has some knowledge of intelligence work from the war years and understands the importance of Bond's mission, having arranged the connection with MI6. We also meet Sean Campbell from Station Z, who is captured snooping around Piz Gloria. His desperate appeals to Bond likely help in ultimately giving 007 away, and Bond realises he has to get out fast. Finally, among the Fleming allies is Taiga Tanaka, the head of Japan's intelligence service, and a former Japanese spy during his time in England as an embassy attaché, though he does claim some measure of regret for this. Taiga is presented through something of a stereotypical lens in many ways, representing and constantly explaining a very Ian Fleming depiction of Japan, especially where things like the approach to suicide, geisha houses, and other matters of Japanese culture happen to be concerned. However, Taiga has his own racist attitudes. He takes a very dim view of Westerners who moved to Japan and established themselves there, and this does, to a degree, hold true today, even if it's not always openly expressed. Nonetheless, Taiga is very professional, very well versed in intelligence gathering, and has a great command of intelligence networks along with many capable agents, utilising both traditional and modern methods. As Bond's contact Dicko Henderson of the Australian Intelligence Services mentions, there's a very good reason that out of all the Japanese, Taiga is the one in charge of the intelligence services. He is shrewd, he is powerful, he is imposing, and he's quite clever. He does have a good sense of humour as well, and he seems to enjoy pushing Bond a little to discover just how well that English stiff upper lip holds. He has a very similar personality to Bond in many ways, but this is tempered perhaps by those stereotypical approaches, all of which are originally presented to us by Henderson, a very stereotypical, if admittedly very accurate Australian. Henderson is fond of excess alcohol, he has a very crude and gruff nature, he's notably homophobic and very racist towards Aborigines, so really, what's inaccurate about a stereotypical Australian there? Not much has changed since Fleming wrote the book, unfortunately. Going back to Taiga though, he seems to take a much more active role in running his various operations than, say, M would, as he actually helps Bond out through the preparations for the mission, providing a lot of information and cultural explanations which are nonetheless very Ian Fleming. Taiga's headquarters are set in a disused subway station, which has the cover of the Bureau of All Asian Folkways. He actually served as an aide to Admiral Onishi during World War II before training as a kamikaze pilot, and even though he is quite happy with the life he lives, he does hold a slight regret he never actually got to undertake a mission. He does enjoy life quite a lot. It's not too far to say that he does have a similar personality to Bond. He does seem to enjoy alcohol and has had a number of affairs. He pays alimony to 3 past wives, and he owes Henderson quite a bit for having kept him out of 2 more. We also know that Tiger reached the 7th Dan black belt in judo, apparently refusing to go higher due to the extreme dedication involved and the apparent renunciation of most aspects of life. While we don't know how much of this is a full explanation of Japanese culture and how much of it is Fleming having a, let's say, slight racial bias, Tiger is nonetheless a pretty interesting character, fairly well developed, and having a much more central role rather than in the movie where he's almost in the background a bit. Still a prominent character, but is a bit more like M, but Japanese. Anyhow, that sums up this lesson. Apologies for the padding. I was trying to fix up something in Surface because I'm convinced I managed to glitch the cheat. I've got it, as you'll see, but something weird happened with the grenade launchers. We'll get to that. Okay, nice little bit of padding there, I'm going to be honest, because all the failed attempts probably helped me drag out a bit of extra information, but even then we might have to essentially have a truncated version. Who knows? Maybe, tell you what, I'll add the rest of the lesson. Well, this is probably the end of the lesson because I'll have cut in some stuff where I just fool around with the cheat. DK mode? Well, you'll have seen what it does. Anyway, next time we are going to the surface. Somewhere James Bond never actually went during the course of the mission. Or at least the course of the movie. He knows that Natalia came from the 7IR installation, but Bond never goes there. Anyway, I hope you've been enjoying the lessons, and thank you very much for joining me. Till next time, this is Red 2 returning to base.